More than 5 minutes, or my community college education in 3 lessons. If the volleyball nets aren't up by 9 and the tennis courts squeegeed before noon, the shit lands on me and shit runs downhill, Phil said. He stood 6'6", and from his seat in his office chair, we weren't quite eye level, but close enough. If you were an athlete and on work study, this was reportedly the best job on campus. My friend Doug had held it during his time at Clackamas and recommended me. Phil hired me on the spot. Phil's office wasn't much, a ratty couch facing an institutional metal desk in a little basement corner just off the equipment checkout desk. I spent as many hours in that basement over the next 2 years as in the library or classroom. One coworker at the equipment desk spent most of her time trying to coax us into removing our shoes so she could practice reflexology. Another's purse dropped to the ground and popped open, allowing a Ruger 357 to spin across the concrete floor and momentarily remove all oxygen from the room. Virginia had fled an abusive marriage in New Mexico. If that son of a bitch comes looking for me, I want to be ready, she said by way of explanation. Phil told her to put it away for Christ's sakes and not to bring it to work again. I don't know if she continued carrying or not, only that we never looked at Virginia or her purse quite the same again. I reported for work at 7 a.m. No one else wanted the early shift, and when I was on time for 2 weeks running, I earned a promotion. I pulled shifts between classes, practiced basketball for 2 hours every afternoon, and fielded questions from teammates as to why I was always in the library, and from professors why I was always in the gym. But I embraced both places on those rainy Oregon mornings and afternoons, daydreaming while gazing out the library windows over the sodden athletic fields, or removing warm towels from the dryer in the steamy, bleachy fog of the laundry room. I was entrusted with the keys to the office and equipment room and enjoyed opening the door and checking in early mornings, appreciated walking out into a clearing sky with Mount Hood looming close and white while I squeegeed the tennis courts or lined the soccer pitch in the intermittent sun between showers. For the first time in my life, I applied the same discipline to my studies as my work or sports. I didn't skip classes, did my homework, and discovered that I enjoyed the coursework, particularly the reading and the writing. The laundry room contained commercial industrial-sized washer and dryers, including the extractor. The extractor, a fearsome machine, spun with sufficient speed and force to pin towels to the side of the basket so they had to be peeled away. Imprints of the drain holes remained as I tossed the towels into the dryer. The extractor contained a level indicating bubble at the top of the center column. We were trained to check the bubble before each operation and to never, ever unlock the latch or open the top until the extractor spun to a complete halt. If you run that thing off plumb, it'll vibrate across the room and walk right through that concrete wall before you can do a damn thing, the safety inspector said. He paused to allow his words to sink in. He also warned us to never climb inside the dryers, tempting as it might be. A group of characters checked in on breaks and hung around the office, including Dale, a custodial engineer, and undoubtedly the foulest-mouthed individual I met to this day. He opened conversation with a few shit, sons of bitches, assholes, and motherfuckers, then got down to cussing. The few words sprinkled between expletives were affable and generous, but it required effort to filter them out. Dale piloted the van on road trips for the women's and men's basketball teams, and later that season, at a home game, performed one of the most genius and quick-thinking acts I've witnessed. Chemeketa was our closest rival, and members from both baseball teams led cheers and taunts along the sidelines. The crowd was unusually large and boisterous. Late in the closely contested game, Jeff, our small forward, stood waiting to inbound the ball along the sideline. Before the referee handed him the ball, a Chemeketa baseball player stood and yelled in Jeff's face and then poked him in the chest. Jeff's father stood from his courtside seat and pushed the heckler. As the referee attempted to step in between them, the baseball player lunged over the ref's shoulder and punched Jeff's father in the face. Jeff threw a flurry of punches, and he and the baseball player wrestled each other to the floor, along with Jeff's father and the referee. The brawl flashed into the stands as both teams' benches emptied. Tides of retreating fans clashed with players, coaches, trainers, and security personnel rushing to join or intervene. 40-odd punchers, clutchers, and wrestlers immediately overwhelmed campus security. The entire gymnasium snapped to black, and the shrieking, thumping, and grunting ceased in the complete darkness. 2 minutes later, the lights came back on, and combatants stood baffled, embarrassed, and calmed as police arrived on the scene. Dale had rushed from his customary seat at the end of our bench to the Randall Hall control panel and killed the main switch. The following Monday, the Oregonian and KPTV came to campus to interview coaches and selected players. Tim, our starting shooting guard, when asked if there was a racial element to the brawl, replied, "No, I don't believe so. I think it was mostly just a bunch of white guys fighting a bunch of black guys." Coach Roy scrambled to the mic to end the interview. Lesson 1, it's always difficult to determine where idiot ends and savant begins. When Dale complained of feeling poorly over a number of weeks, Phil insisted he visit a doctor. Complaining, at least about himself, wasn't his nature. "They just tell me I had cancer, something else I don't want to hear." Finally, Phil accompanied him to the doctor. Dale never returned to work and died a month later. He'd lived in a single-wide trailer, spent little money beyond the necessities of Copenhagen, Pall Malls, and Lucky Lager. He'd accumulated significant savings and invested heavily in life insurance. When his semi-estranged daughter arrived at his funeral in a new BMW, co-workers and athletic department staff quickly passed judgment. "She never even visited the hospital, as far as I know," Phil said, and we nodded. Who are we to think that, let alone say it? Something had worn a significant hole in Dale's life long ago that he attempted to fill with his job and an outsized devotion to junior college athletics. Whatever he left for his daughter, he believed she deserved it. 1988 Portland was not Portlandia. That November, Magalita Sarah, an Ethiopian student, died at the hands of a baseball bat-wielding neo-Nazi skinhead at the corner of Southeast 31st and Pine. The 3 skinheads who attacked Sarah were part of a group known as East Side White Pride. Several members enrolled on our campus to study German. Distinguished by shaved heads, sneers, and swastika tattoos, they swaggered across campus, interacting little with other students. And without incident until late one afternoon, a group, again of 3, accosted and beat a slightly built high jumper from the track team. The next day, we discussed the attack in Madame Ladd's French class. A brilliant, beautiful, and elegant woman in her mid-70s, Madame Ladd taught both French and German. She'd lived in Belgium during World War II and had been active in the resistance. Following the war, she married a GI and moved to Portland. Madame Ladd hosted dinner parties for the French club, and her husband grew orchids in a glassed-in atrium housing their lap pool. My progress in French was slow and anything but steady. Madame Ladd appreciated and encouraged my efforts, but by nature and necessity was unfailingly honest in her assessment. My reading comprehension graded adequate, but oral comprehension and verbal expression lacking, and likely to remain so. Although I was unique in being her only student to date to speak French in a Texas accent. One dark and rainy winter afternoon, we crossed paths on the Commons, and she complimented the pronunciation of my greeting by telling me that I was beginning to speak French like a native. Slight pause as I bask in her praise, then, of Houston. She strode off in a peal of laughter as bright as her yellow rain boots and red umbrella. But on this spring morning, the discussion was taught. A number of students, me among them, believed the skinheads should be banned from campus. Madam Ladd agreed the perpetrators should be expelled, but maintained you could not ban individuals based upon their appearance or beliefs, only their actions. When you exclude people, you close off dialogue and therefore any chance to effect change, she said. How do you intend to change someone that is just evil, I said. Madam Ladd stood erect at the lectern. Young man, don't attempt to instruct me on evil. I have stared evil in the eye. Lesson 2. Everyone in the world knows something you don't, especially people older than you. Occasionally keep your mouth shut and listen to them. Craig, my first creative writing teacher, tended to lose stories and exercises he didn't feel merited attention. Most, if not all of those stories deserved to be lost. He assigned stories intended to instruct us in forms and elements of craft by example. Like practicing free throws, once taught the correct form and fundamentals, you didn't need someone to comment on every shot. The first piece of mine receiving any feedback involved a teenage boy attempting to seduce the attractive single mother living next door by repairing a sticky window frame. The film rights are still available on that one. A few weeks later, during a preseason scrimmage, I received a swing pass at the top of the key. Trevor, our best outside shooter, spotted up for a 3 in the right corner. I sold my defender on the fake pass toward Trevor, crossed over, took 2 hard dribbles down the key, jumped, and extended toward the rim. But instead of finishing, I was met by a 6'8" center who swatted the finger roll and knocked me to the hardwood. No foul called and none warranted. The pace of the game slowed down for me all through high school, sped to frenetic in college. But on the page, I could back up and hit that shooter with the pass. I could pull up for the uncontested 17-foot jumper. A blank page offered a world of decisions and options to try and try again. I began looking forward to classes and work and dreading basketball practice. The skills that have made me a small school league MVP didn't translate. But what I'd learned growing up on the ranch and mowing lawns during summers, show up on time and finish your task, did. Early in the season, Craig came to one of our games. The next day after class, he asked me how many minutes I'd played. Around 5. How many hours a day do they practice you? A little over 2. You know, he said, as he handed back my first story, if you'd spend those 2 hours writing every day, you might end up with more than 5 minutes. It wasn't much, only everything. I walked back across the campus in the cold drizzle, considering how I'd miss going home for Thanksgiving and would be lucky to make it over Christmas. I entered the warm and brightly lit gym, passed through those wide hallways and down the stairs to the equipment checkout counter, found Phil at his desk in the corner, and asked him if I could still keep my job if I wasn't on the basketball team, and thus begin my education in earnest. I love basketball to this day, but would never again pursue it with that single-mindedness. My skills and ability deteriorated from that day forward, but I enjoyed playing more. Lesson 3. The long, great, recently late Tom Petty sang, "The waiting is the hardest part." I maintain the starting is the hardest part, the middle perhaps the most interesting and rewarding, and the end, well, the end is ultimately more revealed than accomplished and takes care of itself. Thank you.